In my videos, whenever I discuss the Dutch railway system, you can often see these units in the footage. These are the VIRMs. That acronym stands for Verlengd Interregio Materieel, or Lengthened Interregional Stock. They are to the Netherlands what the British Railways classes 158, 43 and 800 are to Britain, bundled up in one unit. Now why would I say that? The first units came about in 1994. Back then they were classified IRMs, yet to gain the extra carriages which would gain them the V prefix, V standing for lengthened. They were delivered in pairs of driving cars, which were upon delivery sorted into sets of 3 cars or 4 cars. Initially, they were meant as long-distance commuter trains. Short-range commuter trains in 1990s Holland were the NS Sprinters. The IRMs came hot off the heels of the NS DDM and DDARs, which were introduced for the same purpose. Commuting by train was made a lot more attractive to students in the mid-90s, and with the introduction of the IRMs, longer distance trains could remain of a sensible length, whilst offering the same luxuries as a proper intercity train. The IRMs were initially built with a lift to carry the refreshment trolley up to the upper deck. Back then, there were still a good amount of intercity trains, which were loco-hauled, most of these by the NS Class 1100 and 1200, not to mention a lot of diesel multiple units too. Then along came the DDM, DDAR and IRM, and within 5 years, those locos and units were all replaced by these, by all accounts, superb trains. By their sheer numbers, initially totalling 178, they would eventually join the ranks of true intercity trains in 2001, when NS decided to lengthen the 3-car trains to 4-car trains and the 4-car trains to 6. The IRMs, now VIRMs, climbed the ranks of NS passenger carriage remarkably quickly. Initially pigeonholed to just shuttle between 1 or 2 provinces, so much so that the class enjoyed the nickname of Regio Runners, to suddenly crossing the country multiple times a day. Though it's not hard to see why. They carried a far greater number of passengers for a unit which, on average, had just 5 coaches, and they were a fair bit quicker than the locomotives they replaced. A VIRM being capable of 140 km an hour, but their cruise speed maxes out at 160. That's 100 miles an hour in fake measurements. Now, I could get down into the nitty-gritty with sub-classifications and whatnot, but I think their eventual upgrades are more interesting to talk about. In 2003, they lost the need for the lifts, as NS cancelled their refreshment trolleys. A slightly modernised version of the VIRM was ordered in 2007, which were basically all new VIRMs rather than lengthened IRMs. These, in fact, still roamed the network in their mostly unaltered 2007 guise. In the 2010s, NS sought to modernise their fleet, now solely consisting out of passenger trains, them having lost freight operation a long time ago. This drive saw the DDARs rebuilt into the DDZ, and the VIRMs to equally receive modernisation. Lighting went from fluorescent tubing to LEDs, seating went from upholstered fabric to faux leather, and curiously, their livery changed too. Where NS used to paint these trains in canary yellow with a continuous blue stripe travelling along the upper windows, the yellow got a bit darker and the stripe travelled along the lower windows instead, incorporating the doors into the blue. Mind you, this all took place in 2016. Keep that in mind, as that retroactively became the biggest complaint about the VIRMs in intercity duty by younger people. Finally, in 2021, NS began their latest plan to bring the VIRM up to speed, as it were. Again, chasing the seat covers, livery, and further gadgets such as a knob depressed into the rear of the seat in front of you, which extends to function as a coat rack, as well as a super secret feature which I'm going to keep a mystery for now. An interesting tidbit about the newest modernised VIRM livery, known as the Flow scheme, it used to incorporate the whole of the driving car's front end into the blue. However, an accident with a blue-fronted NS SNG Sprinter meant that all NS trains are to have yellow fronts. This alteration to the livery sees the blue, rather inelegantly, stop just short of the driving car's nose, right under the windows, an effect which, due to the new livery specifications, now also applies to the VIRMs in the old colour scheme, with the grey of the roof no longer following the curves of the nose. Fun fact, the curves of the nose, when viewed from the side, give these units the nickname bisons to some people. Now, as with all passenger rolling stock, the VIRMs are not everything to all people. The seats nearest the windows being a bit cramped due to covers on the floor making it rather uncomfortable to sit with both your feet level, or the lacking luggage space are instances of people having some gripes with the units. But the newest modernisation actually is making a bit of a name for itself. Not because it's faster nor nicer looking, but because they are the first NS intercity trains in service with USB charging ports. Much like how BMW and Mercedes never really got a foothold in the Americas due to their initial lack of cup holders in their vehicles, a silly feature like a charging port has almost completely invigorated the VIRM's image. The VIRMs are the trains that keep NS going. And yes, whilst there might be other more flashy trains, some of them older than the VIRMs, NS nor the travelling public should take the VIRMs for granted.